Thanks very much for being here. You could probably see on the PowerPoint slide here that I'm Dan O'Connor with a company called NXLevel Compliance, and I'm not going to do any advertising. I'll just say that all we do is life science compliance training. And if you happen to want to talk to us afterwards, we do have a booth in the exhibit hall. Okay?
And they're really good at it.
That was not a plant. Okay. Sherri?
Yes, so my name's Sherri Borgal. I'm from Alnylam Pharmaceuticals in Cambridge. Thank you so much for having me. I support North America for our rare business. So I support all the sales, marketing, and MSL field teams in North America. And I'm kind of a one-person show. I was just talking to somebody who's a trainer in compliance, and I'm just like amazed because, oh my gosh, you have a whole position that's just training. That's amazing. A lot of us I know are doing it all ourselves. It's a lot. So maybe we can give you a few tips here and there to make it a little bit easier for you.
Great. Okay, so how many people here are, all you have in your responsibility is training? I just want to get a sense of who's out here. All you do is training. I saw your hand kind of move. This is like an auction, so if your hand moves, it's like, no. So no.
Way more than trading.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So just one hand?
Yeah.
Okay, so we know who it was Sherri was just talking to.
Yeah, yeah, right, sorry.
Okay, how many have responsibility for training as part of your responsibilities right now?
Me. Yeah.
How many do not? Don't want to put you on the spot. Okay. Oh, you don't have to be sheepish. Be proud. Be proud. Okay. Well, thank you especially for being here. Okay, so we're going to talk about, as you can tell, evaluating training effectiveness, evaluating the impact of your training. That's really, what this session is about. As you can see, there's two of us up here. It's not a giant panel, and our intent is to expand the panel. So guess who else is on the panel? All of you.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to invite all of you to just interact at various points throughout this, rather than just having a couple of talking heads up here. I know everybody enjoys just sitting and listening to talking heads, right? Who enjoys sitting and listening to talking heads with no interaction? Oh, there's two people. Well, you can do that then. You don't have to interact. But if you like to interact, this is the place to do it. We really want to hear from you because we've got a nice broad cross-section of people out here. I'll give you a tiny bit of my background, which I didn't do yet. I've been in the compliance training business since 2009. My first initiative was with a company we've heard from, Novartis, working on their first CIA. The training for that kind of way back, like 2010, I think we started working on that with a different company I was with. So I've been in this a while. I've never actually worked in industry. I'm not smart enough for industry to hire me, but so I worked from outside of industry. You're supposed to laugh at that and say, no, Dan, you are. Okay, so we're going to jump in a little bit, and we'll just kind of tell you, we've already told you who we are. This is our agenda for today. Evaluation of training does not happen kind of in a vacuum. It actually happens as part of a process. So after we talk a little bit about why bother evaluating your training, we're going to talk about the ADDIE model. Has anybody ever heard of that? One? Anybody else? Oh, you're going to be so excited. Right, David? Yeah. David's pumped. Can see. And then we're going to focus on the E in ADDIE. E stands for, guess what? Evaluate, exactly. So we're going to focus mostly on that. So we're going to kind of race through, very briefly touch on some things in the other parts of it, just to put evaluation in context. And then we're going to make you do something at the end. All right? You're actually going to get together with each other, and we've got a little sheet that we'll hand out and ask you to kind of do a little bit of an application exercise. Does that sound like fun? Good, it is.
Yeah.
All right.
And along the way, too, I hope to chime in and give some, practical examples from my experience and maybe things that will give you all ideas. So.
Sherri's the voice of reason, in other words. I'm the voice of training nerdiness. All right, so first question, why evaluate training? Why bother evaluating training? What do you guys think? Okay, to see if it's effective, good.
To show our value, maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because compliance. Yeah.
Maybe to show the value. Anybody else have another reason they're thinking?
Regulations change.
Yeah. Regulations change, so you want to see if it's kind of aligned to where it needs to be. Yeah. Okay.
A lot of investment.
I didn't hear where that came from. Yep.
It's a lot of investment.
It is. Yeah, it is. So finish that sentence.
You want to know if it's worth it, and it goes back to the effectiveness.
That's right. That's exactly right. And when we get down to this, the evaluation model we're going to talk about, you'll see there's a number of different ways that you can evaluate, kind of leading up to, I'm sure you've heard of Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. Okay, so we have a plant in the audience, fortunately, and you're going to see the final part of that is really trying to prove the value of what you did, even if it's not a dollar value, dollar for dollar value. Okay, so this is the ADDIE model, very simplified. ADDIE stands for Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. And so we're going to quickly touch on every single one of these, and you'll see the further we go towards evaluate, the less we're going to touch on them, because we really want to get to the meat of this, which is about evaluating your training. Okay. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, so what I would just want to say here, sorry,
you want that
no,
one?
and the next
Sorry,
one, yeah,
yep.
yeah. About addressing, really getting to the risk and what behaviors you want to increase or decrease this is where sometimes us people, most of us who wear many hats with training, with compliance, and training is one of them, can cut corners. Like sometimes I'm so busy and I need to plan a training, like I just want to plan the training and put something together, and I know there are certain subjects that we need to train on or we haven't trained on in a while, and skip this step. But it is so important, and especially important to know, what behaviors you want to increase or decrease, so that you can evaluate after, and so you can put some of this data to work for you. And so, I'll give some examples today of like HCP meals, because it's a recent training we did, but. Do you want to? We want to increase the accuracy of understanding of reportable HCPs entered in Concur. We want to decrease the amount of errors people are making when we're monitoring their HCP meals. So those are things that we could measure by when we're monitoring and doing our regular monitoring. So is this training working? Well, let me see from our monitoring, and it's hard numbers, it's hard facts. So you can show those on graphs and things like that. All these data things we've been talking about at this conference. So I just wanted to make that point.
Perfect. Early in my training career, I went through an instructional design course, and it was 5 days on instructional design. And that was back in that day, so you're like, wow, this dude's really old if they had a 5-day training program. Yeah, but it was 5 days. So actually, this analyze step, there's much more to it than just this simplified definition here. But as the real world kicks in, you've got a lot of other things to do, it really does come down to, okay, what's your risk? And what behaviors are causing that risk? And then how do you affect those? And that is an oversimplification, but that's really, if it boils down to that, if you're only thinking of 2 things when you're trying to figure out, well, what do I need to train on? It does come down to what behaviors do I want to affect? What do I want more of or less of? Pretty simple stuff. Any comments from our expanded interactive panel? Yeah? Okay. So question for all of you. How do you figure out what you should be focusing on in training? How do you decide on your training priorities?
Does anybody do risk assessments, maybe? Risk assessment monitoring? I'm giving you all the answers.
See, they're waiting for you. You have to do like a
All right,
pregnant
shit,
pause.
okay.
Yeah. It puts pressure on them, and you just stare out there and see what happens. So what are you doing? How do you figure out what you should train on?
When there's big changes to the business and when we have big opportunities to meet with people like a POA. So there's like a time.
Okay. So what's kind of driving then? Where are you getting the information from that tells you, okay, I've got 30 minutes or an hour at this POA? Where do you get the information that's telling you what you should be focusing on? And okay, yeah. So the business monitoring, where else are you getting information? Yeah.
Policies and procedures that are specific to a particular job.
Okay, when you're actually pulling it down. Okay. So we asked this question we did a benchmarking survey, compliance training benchmarking survey. We asked this exact question of people. And I know that's really hard to see. So I'm going to kind of rattle off a couple things to you. And if you want the slides, you can follow up with us. So one of those was exactly what was just said. It's feedback from business professionals. So you're hearing things from the field. 76% of people. Reports and guidance from government authorities. So from outside of the company, DOJ releases their guidance. What do? Updated guidance, and what do, right? We adjust the training that we're providing. We take another fresh look at it. Input of compliance professionals. So how many were in the Novo Nordisk, or the session this morning where Jill, okay, yeah, so they have compliance business partners embedded in the organization, and they're hearing from them in the various business units, what's going on. So, there's a whole list of things. The good news is, there's a wide variety of kind of things that you're doing already that you can draw on. Towards the bottom of the list was actually looking at training assessments. How many do assessments with their training? Just a quick show of hands. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to make you stand up or anything. Quick show of hands. Okay. How many actually then look at that and say, okay, well, that's going to, we're going to use that as input for what we're doing next year? Okay. Yep. Yeah, so we have a client who does like an annual Jeopardy game. And they look at the results of that assessment, and they say, okay, well, that's going to inform what we do going forward. So there's lots of different things you can do. Yep.
Can I chime in? So another thing where I get my training ideas for is questions that come in from any of the people I support, sales, medical. If they're emails, I have them. I have it in a saved folder, sales questions, or I have a OneNote file that just says next training topics. And so whenever I'm in a meeting or I get a question, a text or I'm on a phone call, I'll do that. And also investigations. So when there are investigations that I'm aware of and there's a training topic, sometimes I'll have to do the training like right after, but sometimes it can wait. Certain topics can wait till the next POA. So I just wanted to mention that if you're looking for any ideas for, where would you get that, those important topics to train on at your next POA or whatever. Yeah.
So we're spending a little bit more time on this topic versus some of the others we're going to get to before we get to evaluation, because this is where it starts. Right? If you do some sort of analysis to figure out what we should be focusing on, well, ultimately that should feed through to the training and then what you're evaluating on the back end. So it's really a cycle that you're kind of following. The bottom line is this, right? There's a lot of different reasons that people are not doing what you want them to do. Sometimes it's training. The knee-jerk reaction that we hear from people and like from people like you is, people aren't doing such and such, or they're doing too much of this. We got to train them. Sometimes it's not training. Sometimes it's some other factor, maybe an incentive system. I remember years ago, GSK went to a no commission, no incentive structure for their reps. Because what was happening? The reps may have been doing things they should not have been doing because they were incented to just drive business. So that's one example of a factor where they knew what they were supposed to do, but for some reason they were not doing it. And I think that's probably the case in virtually every CIA we see, is the reps kind of know what to do. They do know what to do, but sometimes they don't do it because there's other things that are driving them. So only if they lack the knowledge and skill to do what it is you want them to do, should you do training. Otherwise, explore some other things. And this is coming from a person who's a training professional. So don't train unless you need to. Look at other factors as well. Okay, we're going to jump to design quickly. There's two pieces we want to touch on here. The main one is your learning objectives. And with learning objectives, what you're trying to do is answer the question, okay, based on these behaviors, what do I want people to know or be able to do by the end of this training? And then guess what you're going to do versus those learning objectives at the end of this when we get to the E part. Any wild guesses? Did somebody say evaluate? Yes, you're going to evaluate. versus those objectives. Okay, so I'm going to get a little nerdy on you here. We're going to talk a little about Bloom's taxonomy. Anybody know Benjamin Bloom? I don't think he's alive anymore. I didn't check. This was a model that came out in 1956. This was a way of classifying verbs associated with learning objectives. So these are really levels of learning. The bottom level is just getting people to remember things. Next level up is to not only remember, which is kind of memorizing, but then to really understand it, to internalize it. How does this really work? The next level up from that is to be able to apply it. So do it when they get back to their jobs. The next level up from that, David's getting excited, I can see. He's like, oh, Bloom's taxonomy, you got me. The next level up from that is analyze. So they take that information and turn it around in their heads and apply it to other situations. The next level beyond that is to evaluate. So can I now evaluate behaviors, let's say, for example, versus all the things that I know about this particular objective? And then finally, can I think up new things and create according to the knowledge that I now have? Realistically, these are the three areas that, within your compliance training, you'd most likely be focusing on: getting people to remember things, getting people to understand things, and getting people to apply what it is you're trying to train them on, assuming you're doing training. And here's some useful verbs that you can use. These kind of are, categorized according to remember, understand, and apply. So, remembering, you want people to identify things or duplicate something or list something or recall something. Understanding, you might want people to discuss something, explain something, define something. When it comes to applying, you might want people to actually demonstrate, which is what we're going to have you do later. Demonstrate, implement, kind of show you, right? You want to see it actually happening. That's the application. So we have 3 learning objectives today. Are you excited? All right, here we go. First objective, we want you to remember something. We want you to walk out of here being able to identify the 5 stages of the ADDIE model of instructional design. So, should I test you on that now? Okay. Oh, not yet. Okay, we'll wait. Okay. So we'll wait until you see it a couple more times. All right. Okay. Second thing is, we want you to understand something. So in other words, we want you to define the 4 levels of evaluation, which I know David could probably do right now. Sorry to keep picking on you, David. I just hope it's okay. And then in terms of applying, we want you to demonstrate a basic understanding of those 4 levels by applying them through an application exercise. I can see you are all ready to jump out of your seats right now, aren't you? Yes. Okay. So that's objectives, right? That's what do you want people to know or be able to do. And then it's designing a training plan. This is vastly oversimplified, skimming the surface of putting together a training plan. There's 2 things that we want you to remember walking away with. One of those is to make sure you're addressing the forgetting curve. Here's another little training nerdy thing we got going on. Hermann Ebbinghaus, psychologist, a very long time ago, did a series of tests that proved that you can bring people up a learning curve on the left side, so you can have really great training, but immediately after that training, what starts to happen? People start to forget. So that's the right side of the curve. So, the idea here is that you need to be doing things on both sides of the curve and make sure when you're laying out your training plan that you're addressing things on both sides of the curve. So it does, I don't want to say no good, but you get very diminishing returns, I'll call it, if you say roll out a 45-minute code of conduct training. And you're really expecting people to kind of recall all of those principles throughout the year. Instead, why not a 15-minute code of conduct training, and then you have like a campaign. If you rolled out a new code of conduct, 15-minute, introduce it, then you've got a campaign throughout the year of these short little pieces that you're rolling out, emphasizing the principles in action, let's say. So that's the kind of stuff that's happening over on the right side of the curve. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to just say, I have a couple quick examples written down on reinforcement. So for the past 2 years at the sales meetings, I've done training, I've done live training, and as engaging as I try to make it, I'll talk a little bit about that later, people are gonna leave the training and probably forget half of it, or maybe a little more than half, I don't know. But So what I do every time is I do a summary sheet of all the learnings, and I try to do a PDF document, quick. I make it bullet pointed, easy to understand. And what I just did was I made the training document. I have legal and reg take a look at it. Just to make sure, they don't have any problems with it. But what I did was I did a train the trainer with our compliance champions. So the compliance champions, I reviewed it. I said, they were instructed to go for their team calls and review it with their team. So it wasn't coming from me, it was coming from them. And then they have this handy little document that reminds them of all the principles we went over at the training. So that was good. Another one, I talk about HCP meal trainings we did, how to enter HCP meals accurately and comprehensively into Concur. And after the training, what we did to make sure people remember is there's an application within Concur called Lemon Learning. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but Lemon Learning has guides, and they actually have a guide on how to enter HCP meals. So based on my training, we worked our training department was not our corporate training, but we have a training department. They don't help me that much, but they help me with this. But they help me based on our training make a guide in Concur so that when you go to Concur and enter an HCP meal, you can get live, help with this guide, which was cool. And then one other thing, I had to train based on an investigation. It was about sales not being involved in any grant questions or grants, educational grant questions they might get from HCPs. And so I delivered the training in regional meetings and then left them with a nice little one-pager document with a QR code to the policy. Again, so, if they were, this is a virtual training, so sometimes people aren't all listening, they have something to go away with. So this is something you can also work with vendors on too. One of the things, people were talking about in the other sessions about 20-page policies and policies that maybe you have that don't fit your culture. But what about just not redoing the policy? What about just making a quick reference guide for your policies? So somebody, make that quick. You can do that yourself or work with a vendor. So just some tips.
Cool. So what are you doing? What kinds of tools and approaches are you using for your compliance training? Just throw some words out here. What are you doing?
Online modules.
Okay, yeah. Short, long, everywhere in between?
Medium.
Okay, like how long is medium? Okay, all right, that's good. Okay, what else? Live training, yeah.
Good.
Still is at the top of the list, actually. Yeah, what else? Anybody doing video? Anyone? Bueller? That's an old reference, right? Yeah, you're doing some video? Anybody create a quick reference? Yeah. Anybody do reading signs? Yes, you could admit it, yeah. That's not really training, we know that, it's checking a box. So this was another thing that we polled. Live training was at the top of the list. 94% of the people who responded to our survey said we do not live training. Another 86% said, we do custom modules designed just for us, e-learning modules. Presentations at sales meetings, which is it's live training, but very specific live training. Coaching. You ever consider coaching being training? How many get out there and do coaching? Go on field rides, maybe do a little coaching, yeah?
Yeah.
So, those are some of the top ones that people are doing. And then kind of on down the list. But you can see, very wide variety of approaches that can be used. It's all about creating a system that works to address your risk levels, in specific areas. In other words, you're going to do, yeah? Yeah, please. Nope. That's what people told us. Yeah. We said, what are you using in games? It's 45%, which is not terrible.
Right.
But yeah, only 45% said games.
I like games. I like
Yeah.
trying to use games.
Yeah. Yeah, we're hearing more and more about gamification, but it's about how do you do that and can you create learning value of it? I mentioned that Jeopardy game, and again, I'm not marketing, I'm just kind of throwing an idea out there. Jeopardy game, there's a platform called the Training Arcade. We don't own it. our client uses the training arcade, you can subscribe, and you could create a Jeopardy game. It's a licensed Jeopardy game, so you won't be breaking the law and getting sued by Sony Entertainment. You can create a Jeopardy game, and there's analytics on the back end. You can see how people did. But it's a game, so people love playing that game, even though you're assessing the daylights out of them, depending on how long you make your Jeopardy game. Okay, the second thing here is to make it engaging, and there's 3 elements to that. It's the way the training is designed and how relevant it is for people. That's the instructional design piece of it. So what's the content you're putting in there? The second piece, does it look good? Is it visually pleasing? Or is it just like, I'm sorry to say, we see a lot of this at these conferences, a lot of words on a screen, bullet points and sub-bullets and paragraphs. And then thirdly, are you using technology appropriately? So you're using video, or you're using, this can be considered technology, right? PowerPoint appropriately, or using it in a way that it is engaging. So I know you want to say something about this.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I guess, a couple things. You know, and I think that, you know, the more you make something engagement, the more people get out of it, the more people learn. So when we're talking about evaluation, right, at the end of it all, if you can make something engaging, people are going to, I think, you know, learn more, usually. What else did I want to say? I wanted to just say that I know somebody said, you know, they do read-in signs. We still have a couple read-in signs too. You know, the read-in whatever, when you check the box, I get it. We also have some LMS courses. I think if you have those courses or the read-in signs, all the more important to do a reinforcement, which is what we were just talking about. So a quick reference guide or something after the fact. But you can just start one by one. So this year, we're you know, again, I'm a one-person show. In this year, we're deciding to redo our code of conduct training. We're just doing it one at a time, trying to get some of those LMS. It's going to be an LMS training, but we're trying to make it more engaging, and just do, you know, have a plan. Maybe just one a year to get those LMS trainings a little bit more engaging or updated, so that people get a little bit more out of it. Also, when you so the LMS training, I can't remember the other thing I have, but I'll come back to it if I remember my other point. But basically, I know what I was going to be. Live trainings. Live trainings, you always have the chance to. I love giving a good live training because I always know I can try to make it engaging, and it doesn't just have to be me up there giving the talk. I get compliance champions. If you don't have champions, get the salespeople up. Have them act out a circumstance, or give them awards for it. Give them gift cards, or we have like points you can give. People love it, and people love hearing from their own. So it's a few tips.
And I'll add one thing to it, right? I mean, you can see Sherri's a little bit enthusiastic and a little bit upbeat. That makes a huge difference. If you're actually up there, even if you're just doing like a PowerPoint at a sales meeting, but you're enthusiastic, you've got an upbeat tone, you got some kind of an exercise for people to do, it goes a long way. It doesn't have to be, you know, like a laser light show from up there. It really doesn't. Okay, all right, we're going to jump very quickly through develop and implement because I want to get to evaluate, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the time a little bit.
I know.
Okay. Couple quick things. So when it comes to developing, again, way oversimplified, you really have kind of two. If you did like a matrix, you could say, all right, we're going to do off-the-shelf or custom training of some kind. We're going to do it ourselves, or we're going to use a vendor. Really, those are kind of your two. If you did like a matrix, which I probably should have done that here, you could do a matrix, kind of what do we want to do. Typically, though, you know, what we're seeing is a mix. Some people use some off-the-shelf stuff, as well as do their own. So they kind of blend things together in such a way that you're, I won't call it maximizing your budget, you're optimizing your budget. You're spending the money where it matters, right? And then you're not spending as much money where it just doesn't matter as much, you know, based on the risk that's presented. And then implement is the other piece. This is even briefer. So there's kind of three primary ways that you can implement, just to, again, oversimplify. One is through your learning management system. Another way is if you have an intranet. How many have like a SharePoint site or something like that they use? You can push things out through there. Either they can be static, passive, people can access them, or you can, if you have Microsoft Stream on your SharePoint, You can post videos and you can supply links to those and push those out to people. And then lastly, doing it live. Again, the key thing is, and what the gears are meant to represent here is that these things can all work together. Try and think about it as a system to go back to the idea of a training plan. So these reinforce each other. They're not just kind of haphazard, kind of random pieces, but there's a method behind what you're doing.
And I just wanted to say that I already said it, but having somebody up there other than yourself is always good. Matter of fact, we have our quarterly compliance champions meeting coming up on Friday. And a section of the meeting is a compliance champions created training. We have a new a field guide that we created in compliance that kind of is a go-to guide that links to all our policies for all field colleagues. It's really cool. And so they're doing a training to roll this out to the other compliance champions that train the trainer, so that they train the compliance champions, and it's gonna include a game. They have a search game, a word search that people on the training, they can type into the chat what page a certain topic is on, and then they'll do that to their teams. All the champions will go back to their teams and do the same training. So again, it doesn't always have to be us. It's really cool, I think, if it's a way to get people involved and a way for other people to hear it from people other than us.
So even if you're a one-person show like Sherri, she's kind of multiplying herself, right? You create one thing once, you train other people to deliver that, or in the case of the compliance champions, they created it, you facilitate the sharing with others, and now you're kind of multiplying yourself across the organization. Okay, now we're down to the really exciting stuff. How many are really excited now because we're on the E in evaluate? Yes, okay. All right, so here's the Kirkpatrick model. There's 4 levels of evaluation, and these kind of go from basic to kind of more complicated in terms of implementing them. First level is reaction. How do people react to your training? Second level is what did they learn or learning? Third level is what kind of behavior was affected, or so what behavior change was there. And the fourth level is results. So what results did you get out of the training? Okay, I'm going to go back to this survey one last time just to kind of give you an idea of what people are always interested in, what their peers are doing. That's why I've got these in here. 74% of the people who responded to our survey said they're doing knowledge assessments at the end of e-learning modules. 63% said they're using field observations to evaluate the effectiveness of their training. Then a big drop-off. 35% said they're looking at helpline and hotline data. That surprised me a little bit. 31% said they're measuring versus KPIs. 29% said they're doing surveys of people. How'd you like it, in other words. And then 25% said they're doing knowledge assessments that are administered separately, so somewhere following the training, not at the end of it, which actually is a very good idea, because then you get a much better measurement of whether they're actually retaining anything at all. All right, so let's jump into this. Let's talk a little about reaction. So reaction, all reaction does is it says, hey, how'd they like the training? This is a fancy way of saying that. They found it favorable, engaging, and relevant to them, right? Mm-hmm. How did they like it? How many have taken a training evaluation survey? You will get a survey at the end of this PCC as well, saying, how'd you like everything? Now, there's some keys with this. Actually, let me get to this first. So how are you measuring reaction? What are you doing out there? Yeah?
Being an active listener. So after I do a training, someone asks a question, I let other people talk. So usually it's me giving a training out, and I'll let other people, like other NXLevels or MOSLs talk and hear what their gripes are, because I want to how we can improve the system better.
So it's actually getting like feedback right after the training that you've just done. Like having I have a Q&A session.
Yes.
Okay, cool. What else?
Does anybody have the Microsoft products? Does anybody use Forms? Has anybody used a Microsoft Form before? Yeah, exactly. And that's a really easy way. We do that for our compliance champions meetings. And the cool thing about that is we try to limit free text. We do have free text for like ideas for future trainings, but we try to limit it and we have like the 1 through 5, how the training is. Now, you got to be you know, you got to be okay with getting the feedback, but so far so good. We've gotten pretty good with training, but you can do just like one word drop down answers about what, you know, how the training was, how they thought it was. And so they're really easy. They only take a few minutes. They send all out by email, and then they come back in to you, and they have graphs and everything like that. So those are cool. And then the other thing, sometimes our meetings management, if we have sales meetings and we have a smaller sales team, so sometimes we will have a meetings management team come to our sales meetings, and they'll do our survey for us. We just got one back for our national sales meeting survey that we got really good. There was actually one. I've never had this before. My compliance training was an hour. It was an hour. It was an activity. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. But there was actually a person that said in the feedback that they wished it was longer because they wanted more time. Like, it was good stuff. They were learning like real world stuff, and they wished it was longer. So I challenge you all. This is what we need to this is what we need to be hearing. Longer compliance trainings, and it can happen. It can happen. Seriously.
And you're going to be saying exactly that at the end of this session. I wish it was longer. Okay.
I don't know about that. But.
Here's a couple of quick tips. I'm not going to read these off to you, and I'm sorry if they're too small for you to read. There's a couple of key things here. Try and do that evaluation as close to the end of the training as possible, so you're getting people's honest reactions. The other, to me, the most important thing, though, is try and base your questions on your learning objectives. So if you had a learning objective, let's say your learning objective was for people to, remember five pieces of guidance on running speaker programs. You can ask a question in your survey that says, how well did this training serve to help you remember this piece of guidance for speaker programs, this piece of guidance for speaker programs, this piece of guidance for speaker programs. So you're trying to track back to, did this training help you to do the things that we had in the objectives? Mm-hmm. That's really, to me, that is the most important thing here. Then here's that other stuff here, like, keep your questions short, use a variety of different questions. But the main thing is, and you'll see us harping on this as we go along, keep focused on your objectives. Don't just say, I had a colleague a long time ago who did like a funny evaluation. We used to do a lot of training. We'd run big programs at a company. And just as a gag evaluation, he wrote like, what could be improved? And he had like more geese on the pond. Like all things that we had no control over in the training, which obviously he was not, it was a joke. He was not looking for people to actually give negative feedback. So you want the training to track back to your objectives. That one kind of fell flat, didn't it? Okay, so we're going to move. You had to be there, and you had to know this guy. All right, so next is learning. So this measures the degree to which people actually acquired the intended knowledge and skills you were trying to impart, according to your objectives. Simple, right? And so we're going to do very quick here. How are you measuring learning? Quick poll. What are you doing? Okay, yeah, perfect. What else? How do you know whether people are learning? Yeah?
Something that was said before, just looking at the data, but also if someone will utilize a vendor to support those activities, we'll also ask the vendor directly, like what they're seeing. Are they seeing that, the field is understanding the process, understanding the application?
Yes, great. David?
We use the Likert scores in the surveys and the post-training evaluations, but we also try to get a handle on how it impacts the business. So we changed the survey up a little bit to include a kind of a future-based question, because you want to, like you said, tie the objectives back and we would ask in the survey, to what extent are you going to be able to apply what you learned in your role?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of getting
Yep.
to business impact and how it ultimately was a worthwhile investment.
It's great.
Great example of using what is really a reaction kind of question to try and track forward and get them to, think about, is there an impact beyond just did you like the training? Yeah. Did you want to add anything to that before we move on?
One quick tip is a poll. So somebody said about games, poll everywhere competition. So you have to just subscribe. You can just subscribe for a month. I think it's like $79 or $99. And I'll do this for big sales meetings. I'll have pull everywhere, and they like the competition because, especially if it's sales, they love competition. And I'll do it different ways, but you can do a section of your training and then have them have 3 questions. And then, at the end, it does a leaderboard, and then I always give a prize or points or something like that to people at the end. And it has a great dashboard that you can go to, and it tells you who got the everybody's anonymous. Sorry, it tells you, everybody that got the questions right or wrong, so you can look at where some of the weaknesses are and strengths of your training.
Yeah, right. So here's some tips and best practices. Again, to me, the most important thing here, make sure your assessments are assessing your learning objectives, right? So if you're testing somebody on something, make sure it's not a random fact, but instead it relates to your key learning objectives for the course. So measure those kind of behaviors, skills, and knowledge that you are actually designing the training for in the first place. I know it sounds logical, but you could be surprised, that these things are not always aligned. Sherri talked about, one way to do this. There's a whole, list of other tips here that you'll be able to kind of read on. And again, if you want the slides, I'm happy to pass them on to you. But I know you can all read either now or later. Because I'm really excited about talking about behavior. So behavior. So this is now where the rubber starts to hit the road. This measures the degree to which people are actually applying what they learned. So what are you doing to measure behavior?
We're all doing it.
Yeah. What are you doing? Just in the course of your day. You guys are really good. Usually I can put a lot more pressure and people respond to it, but nobody's responding to the pressure this afternoon.
Monitoring.
Yes, monitoring. How many do ride-alongs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. How many of you look at hotline data? Anyone? Okay. Any other things you're doing to look at people's behaviors? Looking through expense reports, yeah. I know that's one of your examples, right? David, did you have something? You look like you're going to say something.
The field ride concept, the documentation of the content.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody hear that? Field ride kind of documentation reports. Yep.
Keep a close eye on the KPIs, key performance indicators, just in whole and also by therapeutic area and by non-performance type, and seeing where it trends.
That's very exciting. Can you give an example?
Yeah, sure. Like for example, let's say you're doing an MSL is going to go ahead, they meet with a provider, and then they're going to record their interaction in the CRM, and they should have a narrowly tailored fulfillment response. I have to make sure that that could potentially be a non-conformance. So let's say that is potentially a trend. I can go ahead and just keep track of that over the last 4 quarters and hone in by TA if I need to. And then sometimes these TAs in my company are quite large, like oncology or immunology, is I can hone in on the individual team. And not to penalize, but to see if I can do like, training with that individual team and see if we can improve those.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
a really good example. I'm taking that back. Thank you.
Did you want to add anything, Sherri?
No, I think I had that. I had, the monitoring and speaker program monitoring, of course. And then, the cycle goes on, right? You monitor, and then you see if you've gotten better through your training, and then you also know what to train on the next time. And it's a good little cycle there.
Well, the bottom line is you're already doing these things.
Yeah.
Right? You've already got things at your fingertips to measure behavior. So believe it or not, you've been already working at Kirkpatrick Level 3. Who's excited about that?
Who knew? Look at you.
Can I get a
all.
woohoo?
Woohoo!
All right, there we go. Now we're going. All right, so again, first one here, measure back versus your training objectives. Okay? See if the behaviors you were looking to increase or decrease are increasing and decreasing. And then try and kind of look longitudinally, weeks or months after the training to see, is this behavior sticking? And again, this now gets back to that learning and forgetting curve, right? Doing things on the right side of the curve to reinforce and also provide some sort of performance support, quick reference for people along the way. And then finally, results. So this one gets a little dicey. It can become harder to measure because people often think about results. This used to be called return on investment back when Kirkpatrick first invented it. But people were like, very hard to just quantify the numbers associated with the training that we've done. How much money did we save? How much money did we produce based on the training we've done? So it turned into results. There's a lot of different results to look at. But it's really about looking at organizational outcomes. So did you eliminate some risks or reduce some risk is the typical one that we're seeing out there, aimed at reducing risk. So it's, again, tracking back to your analyze phase now and saying, okay, well, what risks are we trying to reduce? Therefore, what behaviors are we looking to increase or decrease? So I heard KPIs, which when you said KPIs, I got very excited because that's looking at results, right? If you have key performance indicators, that is one kind of result you can look to measure versus. Anybody else doing anything like that? Looking at business results, looking at your risk assessment and then kind of coming back and saying, oh, yeah, it looks like that's no longer kind of a top risk for us based on what we're seeing from all the inputs to our risk assessment. Anybody doing that kind of stuff? Don't be ashamed if you are. Yes, I see your head nodding. Okay, thanks. Okay. All right, so here's some more tips and best practices. Guess what's at the top of the list? Tracking back to objectives, exactly. Track back to your objectives again. The other key thing that I'll add here is to try and, if you can, and I heard this in the KPI example, go to your baseline. What does your baseline look like? And are you kind of affecting any sort of change based on the baseline of whatever that measure happened to be? And try and do that as, again, I was excited by your example because you're doing that over time, right? You're kind of longitudinally looking and saying, okay, are things kind of trending in the right direction? It's not just a quick snapshot, but it's, okay, are we actually affecting what's happening in the organization over time? Anything you want to share?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
All right, so now's the really exciting part. Let me just see how much time we have here. We have 12 minutes. Okay, so we're going to be quick with this. What we're going to do is just have you kind of split off into some natural teams out there. I'm going to bring out a very, very complicated handout and give this to you. And it's going to be very quick. All I want you to do, I'm going to assign you a learning objective for your team. Sample learning objective, and you're just going to say, okay, if we were to do this, this would be our evaluation strategy. Here's the things, how we would measure to see if this learning objective is being accomplished. So far make sense? Okay, all right, so, and then be prepared to kind of share thoughts with the group. You can appoint somebody or you can just all kind of shout out when we come out to your group. All right, I see the excitement building in the room. So, here's the sample learning objectives that we're going to be working with. We're going to have 4 teams. So one sample learning objective is you want people to be able to list. If you wrote training, and one objective in that training was people to be able to list at least 3 requirements for engaging an HCP as a consultant. That's objective 1. Objective 2 is if you had training that told people they had to explain the key guidelines to follow when providing anything of value to an HCP. Is that somewhere in your training? Okay. Objective 3, you want people, as a result of your training, to recall 3 examples of promotional communication and explain why those examples are considered promotional. See, we're kind of going up the chain here. Okay. Last but not least, you want people, as a result of the training that you're doing, this objective is you want people to demonstrate how to best respond to a question concerning the off-label use of name a product. Okay. Questions? Okay. So we're going to kind of try to divide. You want to get some of these, Sherri? Yeah. I'll kind of split them up with you. Okay, so let's just naturally sort of divide into, can we take one of you from this row and you guys can kind of group up here a little bit? Okay, I know we're asking you to move, which is hard to do at this time of day. And then maybe you guys can just kind of commiserate with each other here. And then from here back, commiserate with each other some way. And maybe you guys can kind of commiserate with each other.
Everybody gets one?
No, however many you want. Oh, so sorry. Gosh. You can just give them. Yeah, just throw a bunch at them. Okay, so this is group one. So your learning objective is list at least 3 requirements for engaging in HCP as a consultant. Your objective number 2. Objective number 3. Objective number 4. So, evaluation strategy hitting all 4 levels. So how would you evaluate reaction, learning, behavior, and results? So I know this isn't a lot of time, but we'll give you 2 minutes to come up with your comprehensive training strategy. 2 more minutes. Level 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, here we go. Ready or not? Okay, so we're going to start here with group number 1, who I'm interrupting. Okay, you ready? All right, so if you had a learning objective, and your learning objective was list at least 3 requirements for engaging an HCP as a consultant, how would you evaluate it?
Okay, so for the reaction one, we were just going to ask how well they liked the training, if there was anything that they would change about it. Was the timing good, the scope of the training, things like that. For the learning, we would say how well did the training help you understand the 3 requirements. For behavior, so we would monitor kind of the consultant engagement. So were they completing it through the process? Was it, do we see the change that we expected? And then, that's also results. Yeah, so the results were the change from baseline. So also monitoring, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, learning objective number 2, explain key guidelines to follow when providing anything of value to an HCP. How do we measure that? Level 1, 2, 3, 4. They're fighting over who's going to actually shout it out.
So for reaction, we said we could survey shortly after the training. For learning, we said evaluate with knowledge checks or tests. For behavior, we had kind of said observational behavior, speaking with vendors. If we have, for example, providing transfers of value as part of something where we have operational vendors supporting, and doing some additional monitoring as well. And then from a results standpoint, data analytics and monitoring to give holistic KPIs.
Sweet. Thank you. All right, excellent. Okay, so objective number 3. If you had a training objective that said recall 3 examples of promotional communication, explain why they are considered promotional, how would you evaluate that? Level 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait.
What we kicked around was real quick. Level 1 would be a polling after the training to see if this was applicable for them or did they have any gaps. Level 2 would be maybe the results of some of the training to see if we're asking questions or doing modules or anything like that to see what the results were, missing answers, things like that. Behaviors, I think it goes back to monitoring, seeing if we see some things coming out in keywords or free text monitoring, things along those lines. Same thing with management monitoring we talked about. And then results would be if there was KPIs established to see if we had some kind of progress improvement for maybe what the key objective was from the first.
Awesome. It's simple stuff, right? Stuff you're doing. All right, so if you had a training objective that said demonstrate how to best respond to a question concerning the off-label use of a product, what would your strategy be? Level 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's David? It shouldn't be that David. Come on.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me.
All right, what we said for reaction right after the training, we would do like a 1 to 5 scale. You know, how did you like the training? Did it meet your objectives? For learning, similarly, we do a post-training evaluation shortly after we completed the training to measure whether the message got through and they learned about how to respond to off-label questions about off-label uses of the product. Behavior, I think we said ride-alongs would be one method to see. And results also ride-alongs, but also having, similarly KPIs around did we decrease incidents involving off-label promotion of the products? Did they go down? Are we reducing the number of compliance complaints, hotline complaints and such? Did I cover everything? Excellent.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Give yourselves a hand, please. Let's see, are we at the end? Oh, we are almost at the end. Almost. I still have probably 30 seconds in here. So the last thing that we want to say is, first of all, thank you for being here. We know you want to get on to the next. We want to do a little test here. All right, so we're going to go back. How many can name, somebody name the 5 stages of the ADDIE model for me? Yeah, go ahead.
Analyze, design, develop, implement, and...
Yes. All right. All right. Who can define the 4 levels of evaluation? Somebody define level 1. Quick. Okay, good enough. Level 2. Learning. Level 3. Level 4. Yes. All right. Finally, do you feel as if, I guess this is for us to evaluate, right? Do you feel as if you demonstrated a basic understanding of the 4 levels through this application exercise?
I'd say yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right. We think so, too. So we know this was not in-depth, 1 hour. If you'd like a 5-day instructional design course, we don't do those. You can find one somewhere. But Sherri, what would you like to say in closing?
No, just thank you. And if anybody has any questions, you can certainly, I'll hang out here for a couple minutes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Enjoy
you
the
so
rest of the
much.
conference.
Thank you.